Have you ever wondered if you can construct a query at runtime in your room database? It sounds tricky, but don't worry, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to explore how to dynamically query your room database. I totally get it. Trying to figure out how to make your database queries more flexible can be frustrating. You're not alone in this. Many developers face similar challenges when working with databases. Let's dive into the specific question at hand. Is it possible to construct a query at runtime? One user asked about a scenario where they wanted to search playlists with an optional limit. Sound familiar? If so, let's break it down together. So what does this mean for your database? Essentially, you want to create a query that can adapt based on user input. This is especially useful when you have multiple optional parameters, like filtering by category, author, or price range. And stick around. At the end of this video, I will share a powerful tip that will help you streamline your database queries even further. To dynamically query the room database at runtime, the user should start by creating a method that accepts parameters for the query. This method will allow for flexibility in the search criteria. Next, the user should construct the SQL query string based on the provided parameters. This involves checking if the limit is specified and adjusting the query accordingly. After constructing the query, the user needs to execute it against the database. This can be done using a database access method that allows for raw SQL execution. Finally, the user should handle the results returned from the query. This includes processing the data and returning it in a suitable format for further use. Fun fact, did you know that the first databases were just flat files? We've come a long way since then, and now we can create dynamic queries on the fly. Now, let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative approach suggested by a user is to simplify the query using a where clause with two variables. They provide an example where you can fetch data from a student table by matching the student's name and ID. Now, let's see a response from a different user. An alternative approach provided by a user involves using a query in Kotlin with room and view model. They suggest creating a function that retrieves schedules for a specific month. This function uses a query to select all entries from the schedule info table, filtering by the month value, and ordering the results by date and time. Now, let's shift our focus to a different response. An alternative approach, shared by a user, involves using the support SQLite database to create fully dynamic queries in the room database. They suggest constructing a query string that includes the necessary conditions. After executing the query, you can convert the cursor data into your plain old Java object or POJO class for further use in your application. Let's move forward and look at another answer. An alternative approach shared by a user involves creating a dynamic query using parameters. They suggest using the query annotation with placeholders for the values you want to filter by, such as state and date range. That's all on that answer. Let's take a look at another one. An alternative approach shared by another user highlights that raw queries are deprecated according to the official documentation. This means that instead of using raw queries, developers should look for updated methods to construct dynamic queries at runtime. Here's a pro tip. Always consider how many optional parameters you might need. Planning ahead can save you a lot of time and effort when building your queries. And there you have it. You now know how to dynamically query your room database at runtime. Remember, flexibility is key in database management. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more tips and tricks.